office of President of the United States.
For democracy belongs to us all.
A government for our tomorrows.
I, George Walker Bush, do solemnly swear.
We gather because we have chosen hope over fear.
Because this moment is your moment. It belongs to you.
Meet this moment as the United States of America.
Hello and welcome to Washington Post Live. I'm Michael Shear, national political reporter here at the Washington Post. My guest today is Donna Brazile, Democratic Party operative, former campaign manager for Al Gore, ABC News contributor, author today of a New York Times op-ed we will get to talk about. Welcome to Washington Post Live, Donna.
Hey, it's good to see you, and it's always a pleasure to be with the Washington Post Live. I get it every day in the, of course, early morning hours, but I love the Washington Post. I've been a proud subscriber now for over 40 years. That's right, 40 years. I love that newspaper.
You plugged it better than I could. So tomorrow, everyone's going to be tuning in to the first, maybe the only debate between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. You've prepped candidates before for presidential debates, for primary debates. What does Kamala Harris need to accomplish tomorrow for that night to be a success?
Well, first of all, this is her first debate since 2020 when she debated then Vice President Mike Pence. So this is an opportunity for her to answer the why. Why are you running? What do you stand for? What's your vision of the future? She has to own several of those questions. Why? Because not many Americans know who she is. While she's been vice president for the last 4 years, as you know, it's one of the most invisible jobs in American life. We know the president, and often the vice president is assumed to be someone who's there just in case, or someone who might be in the office, but often hiding from plain sight. So this is a great opportunity for her to not just outline her vision, her way forward, which you can go on her website, www.kamalaharris.com, but you can also see some of her wonderful campaign ads that she's releasing almost every half hour. I think that this is going to be a consequential debate for several reasons. The stakes couldn't be higher. We're still a very deeply polarized, partisan country. And while this election will come down to probably a handful of precincts in about 5 to 7 so-called battleground states, it's really about convincing the American people that Kamala Harris is the leader of the future. She has to own the future, and she cannot get rattled by a former president, Donald Trump. I want to make one last point about Donald Trump because he always gets the last word. So I want to try to get a word in edgewise. Donald Trump was hired in 2016. He was hired. The American people wanted change. He was anti-establishment. He had no political experience, and that was really good for them. And so we gave him 4 years, and then we fired him. We fired Donald Trump in 2020, a very important election year, a year that we had to campaign virtually because of COVID. And so this is an opportunity for him to tell the American people clearly, I want to be rehired to do the job, and let's see what he comes up with.
Yeah, you know, the debate format is going to be similar to the one in June between Biden and Trump. No live audience. Mics will be turned off. It's interesting this time around, Harris was actually arguing the mics should be on so that they could have some crosstalk. And it was the Trump camp that was saying, we don't want the mics on. What do you think about the format? Does it give an advantage to one candidate or the other?
Well, look, I read the memo and I understand why she would like to, one, sit down versus stand up, and two, she wanted live mics, maybe a live audience. But look, the rules were set by Joe Biden. The Trump people accepted the rules because they were afraid they would not get a second chance or a second bite at the apple. I think the rules are the rules, and she should be able to adapt to them by, just essentially stay calm, look toward the cameras or speak to the moderator, and forget that there's an elephant in the room. Now, he's the elephant in the room because we know that he's loud. We know that he likes to interrupt, but the rules may confine him to appear more presidential, but I also believe that the rules can work to her benefit because she has two things going for her, and then most Americans probably don't know. One, she's smart. She's wicked smart. She likes to prepare herself, like many lawyers that I've worked for and many candidates I've worked for. But this is not a policy debate, although she may discuss policy. it's Donald Trump is a showman, so she's going to have to perform the act of knowing how to lead, knowing why she is outlining the vision, and again ignore the elephant in the room so that she can get a point across. The American people already know Donald Trump. They know so much about him that many people detest the fact that he's running again, especially after being convicted in 34 counts up in New York. But she cannot just be the prosecutor. She has to be presidential. The American people want someone who's willing to lead, to unite us, or try to bring us together and have some simple solutions to some of the hard charging problems that we continue to face in this country, which includes the economy, inflation, and so forth.
Trump has already been attacking one of your employers, ABC News, saying that the debate won't be fair, that they've been unfair to him. I want to roll a little bit of tape from a Fox News interview he did last week.
I hope they're going to be fair. We're putting a lot of reliance on a network which is known for being extremely hostile to the people in this room and to, I think, 75–80% of the country, if you want to really know the truth.
He also name checked you there, called you a real beauty, which maybe was meant as a compliment, maybe not. You want to respond to that? I mean, do you have any doubt about how ABC News is preparing for this? And I want to also raise something that came up before. That there was an incident a couple election cycles ago where an email came out. It came out that you had passed on debate topics from CNN to the Hillary Clinton campaign. You said it was a horrible mistake you made. You've apologized for it since then. I want to ask you straight up, do you have any idea what the topics or questions will be at this debate tomorrow?
I'm glad you asked this question because, as you can imagine, it's annoying when the former president of the United States, who's a known serial liar, I mean, the guy lies so much, I don't even know if he has a bar of soap left in his mouth. My mom used to tell us if we said something bad about someone or even lied, we should wash our mouth out with soap and then go to confession. I mean, I was dragged to confession several times as a young person. But, I think Donald Trump likes to attack. I mean, that's his way of trying to lower the bar and to level the playing field by saying, hey, I am the victim here. I'm the one who is going to be mistreated. Well, hell, if you're going to be mistreated, stay your butt home. Go home, go wherever that is. You got more homes than most Americans. But this is not about Donald Trump. This is about the future of the American people, the American economy, our safety, our security, our prosperity. And so, of course, Donald Trump want to make it about anything other than what the debate topics will be. ABC News, like CNN and other places I work, including Fox News, he forgot to mention that. I mean, these are great networks. I've enjoyed my relationship with all three networks and a few others. But here's what I want the American people to know about Donna Brazile. I am a serious political strategist. I've been on the battlefield all my adult life. I love my country and I love my party in that order. First, I love the Lord, my country, and my political party. So when Donald Trump says that Donna Brazile gave a question, I always say to myself, what the hell does he know? He wasn't in the room in 2016. We had a very, very energetic campaign season featuring Hillary Clinton. And as you well know, it came down to Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State, United States Senator, First Lady of the United States, and Bernie Sanders, the senator from the great state of Vermont. Mr. Sanders wanted more debates, more town hall meetings. Hillary Clinton was ready to pack it up and say, hey, I won the nomination. And it was my job as vice chair of the Democratic Party, voter engagement, voter participation at that time. And it was my role to try to work with John Podesta on the Clinton side and Jeff Weaver on Bernie Sanders' side. My email was not leaked. WikiLeaks, which was a tool of the Russians that put out, emails and more materials than any publisher could. They tried to create a false narrative. What could I do? At the time, would I put myself in the place of Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine, her vice presidential nominee, and make this about me when we were less than 30 days? I say, look, I apologize that I sent information out to ensure that Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders could complete the primary season by having additional debates and town hall meetings. That was the answer to what I had to say. So Donald Trump can laugh, he can lie, he can be very charming, but he can also be like a late night attack dog. He loves attacking women. He loves attacking Black women. He enjoys the attack because it gets him where his base think that's fighting. That's not fighting. That is not fighting. I know what it is to fight for freedom. I know what it is to fight for voting rights. I know what it is to fight for reproductive rights, for environmental justice. That's not fighting. That's insulting people. That's derogatory. That's inflamed. He just throw what I call bombs. But no, I don't know what my good friend Lindsay Davis or my colleague David Muir will say or will ask, and I don't care. I'm not a journalist. I'm a pundit. I'm a partisan. I have no role in any of these debates. I have no role in any of these conversations. But as vice chair of the Democratic Party, I had a very important role. And I'm proud of that role. And you can ask Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton if I was fair. I was fair to both of them. I want to be fair to both of them because I am the former interim chair of the Democratic Party twice. And nobody would have put me in that position if I was unfair to one of the major party candidates.
You just said that Trump has a record here of attacking Black women. I wonder if you think that makes this debate a little different. I mean, the last time I saw him on stage with Black women was at the National Association of Black Journalists Conference in Chicago, I think, and it didn't go well. I mean, he basically lost his cool very early on in that interview, and suffered several news cycles, of pain as a result. Do you think that dynamic is a challenge for Trump this time?
I hope he's learned his lesson. It was somewhat awkward to see a former sitting president of the United States raise the issue of race and gender in ways that I thought was highly disrespectful. America, as the vice president has said many, many, many times, and she will have to continue to say it, we have already lived through that dark chapter in American life. It was a chapter that made many of us second-class citizens. It was a chapter that didn't recognize our humanity. It didn't recognize that we could be leaders, that we could help lead the United States of America. Women have made so much progress over the last 50 years. It's been progress that has enabled the American families to rise, and it also has helped corporations, academia, which I'm also a part of. Look, to have more female professors, more women in C-suites, more women serving as CEOs, more women in sports, more women in medicine in the STEM field. That's respect for where we have come and how far we are trying to go. The attacks that he makes, whether it's on Donna Brazile, and I don't like to lump myself in any categories because quite honestly, Donald Trump is someone who, insulted Carla Fiorina in 2016. He insulted Nikki Haley in 2024. So if you really ask me, he insults anyone who is not kissing his you-know-what. And I don't want to kiss anybody's you-know-what, because I do believe there's a higher faith and a higher order. And the American people want to see us come together. They want to see us fight like Team USA did just recently in Paris. We're one team. We're one America. And the faster we get away from this Trump era, I think the better off we'll be.
Okay, I want to ask you about your New York Times op-ed today. There was a poll in the Times over the weekend that said 63% of voters want to know more about Kamala Harris's policy positions. Your essay is basically about the unique challenges and opportunities for a vice president running for president. You managed Al Gore's campaign in 2000. He was in that situation. How would you grade how well Harris has done in this last couple of months? It's been a short amount of time in establishing herself as separate from Biden, and also distancing herself from some of her own positions that she held back in the 2020 race that she no longer holds.
Well, first of all, I don't think she should go out of her way to separate herself from Joe Biden. I'm going to tell you straight up, I love Joe Biden. I mean, the only reason why I don't have Joe Biden posted behind me is because it's all over my living room, my dining room. I haven't put him up yet. Joe Biden has been a consequential president. He's been a president that not only has lifted us out of the despairs of COVID, but a president who's tried to lead us into the future by investing in the American economy, investing in the American people, untangling our supply chain, making sure that we have more opportunity, in terms of our energy independence. This is a president who has rebuilt our alliances on the international stage. He is standing up for those principles of democracy. So don't separate yourself. I think she has to present herself as the candidate of the future. This is a choice election because it's so close. She has to present herself as part of what the future will look like. Al Gore had that challenge initially when everybody kept thinking, oh, is he an alpha male or a beta? I'm like, what is an alpha or beta male? I now know what it meant, because we had to show back in 2000 with record job creation, an economy that was on the rebound. What would Al Gore do differently to move the ball further down the goal, the field, to make make things happen for the American people? Kamala Harris has to really own not just the record of the Biden-Harris administration. She has to own the future. She has to talk about, yeah, we're still feeling squeezed. I mean, I went to the gas station just 2 days ago, and I filled up my tank for under $40. I don't know the last time I bought $60 and it was 40. I was like, wow, I got $20 more. You know, I went in Costco and got me something else, including a hot dog. But she has to own this economy and tell the American people, look, we have gotten prices down. Inflation is coming down, but it's not coming down fast enough to help you provide for your family and also save for the future. So that's why I said she has to own the future. Don't separate so much that people forget that you've been part of an administration that has created 16 million jobs, an administration that is investing in the American economy. So I think she can do both. She can walk and chew gum, but more importantly, she can show up as a candidate of change and a candidate of the future. That is going to be her major task tomorrow night.
I mentioned her changed positions from the 2020 primary. You run through the list. She wanted to ban plastic straws. She wanted to ban gas-powered cars. Or stop selling gas-powered cars at a future date. She wanted mandatory gun buybacks. She was against fracking. All those positions she's moved away from. I've been struck by how she's moved away from them rather subtly. She's not saying these things out loud unless asked in that one CNN interview. These are basically things that reporters are being told on background by her campaign. Do you think she's doing it the right way? Should she be more forthright in her evolution in terms of policy as times have changed, as politics have changed, as she's changed?
Well, first of all, as you know, when she was DA, she had to represent her county and her jurisdiction. When she became AG and United States Senator from the great state of California, she had to represent her state. But when she became Vice President of the United States, this was no longer about her 2019 platform or her 2009 position. Look, all of us want to go back and wear a size 10 jean. I mean, I would, but I'm not. So the most important thing is not to go backwards, but to go forward. I mean, we can go back and talk about when I had really, strong Afro hair and all the other stuff. Let's not get caught up into what yesterday meant, but instead, let's focus on what the future means for all Americans. She's no longer representing California and the United States Senate. She's representing the people from our beautiful home state of Louisiana. And by the way, I'm praying for the people on the Gulf because there's a hurricane out there, so we have to pray for them. But she's also representing people in Montana and Wyoming, and yes, in Vermont and Maine. This is a candidate who understands that when she's talking into the camera tomorrow night, there's someone in Nebraska, somebody in Nebraska worried about the future of healthcare in this country, somebody worried about their child going to school the next day. She has to talk to moms and dads across America and grandparents as well, because if she's able to connect with them and to show them that she shares their values, their concerns, then she will win this election.
You mentioned Joe Biden, your affection for him. You played a behind-the-scenes role over the summer, working with delegates to keep them behind Biden during all the tumult after that first debate, and then when Biden got out, to make them move quickly to endorse Harris. Could you just talk about what role you played there? Because I haven't seen you describe it on camera before. Like, what was your job this summer when all that was going on and the Democratic Party was fighting with itself over whether Joe Biden should be the nominee?
I'm finally cleaning up my house after the most tumultuous 6 weeks of my adult life. I had to go back and say, okay, wait a minute. Wasn't it Hurricane Katrina that caused so much lasting pain and damage in my life? It was very difficult to wake up one day and not know if your dad or your sister who was disabled. I didn't know where my family was. I didn't know if they made it out safely. And it took, of course, as you all know, about 2.5 weeks. That was a horrible period. I wouldn't wish that on any American family, not any soul anywhere on the universe. And then here come Al Gore campaign. I remember that vividly. Those 37 long days, everybody kept saying, get out, get out, get out, close it down, whatever. And of course, inside we were arguing about whether or not we should count all the votes or count just 4 counties. Um, we can argue about 2000 again, but I wrote a book about that. That was painful. I think this one here tops everything I've ever done in my adult life. I've never been in such excruciating pain. This is the kind of political pain I've never felt in my life. I had a split screen. On one hand, I could call into New Hampshire. I called Ray Buckley, the chair of the party. I say, hey, Ray, it's Donna. You know, people look at me as the forever chair because I've been in, in Democratic politics for long. I say, Ray, what's going on? How's your delegation? What are you hearing? I mean, I anticipated after the debate, as you well know, on June 27th, and by the way, Donald Trump won that debate, so we can, end that controversy. He won that debate. But I anticipated that maybe I could hear some of the anxiety from the voters, from the delegates themselves, because after all the primary season was over, I only heard from maybe 2 or 3 delegations that they had a few people that were still rocky or had become shaky. And we immediately deployed some of our assets. And this was not campaign driven. This was not driven by the office of the vice president. It was not driven by the presidential campaign. This was people like myself, and I can mention a few others. I'm going to just give credit to one soul because I needed a partner in this and somebody who works like I do, which tends to be 24/7. So I called my friend Bakari Sellers. He's a young man. He's a lawyer. And I said, Bakari, I'm on the rules committee. I know you know politics as well. Let's call into these states. And within 3 to 4 days in the aftermath of the quote unquote bad debate performance by Joe Biden, we knew that Biden was holding his delegates. On the other hand, then here come the politicians. Some local, a lot national. They're like, he has to go. I said, go where? The delegates are still with him. I mean, he has the delegates. And I reminded everybody about the rules. I've been on the rules committee since 1997. I reminded them about you cannot just replace him. He has to step down. He has to step back. He's the nominee. And I said, there's a procedure if he steps down from the presidency. That's in the United States Constitution. But the Democratic Party has rules. And they were voted upon in September 2022. Many of us who are members of the Rules Committee, we go there and on our own nickel and dime. I mean, this is a lot of work. We meet 4 or 5 times a year and sometime online, and we try to get it right. And we try to anticipate everything. And so, as you well know, Michael, we were on a phone call on Sunday, July 21st, at about 1:30, when at 1:42, I believe the president sent the letter out. And, yes, I recall when Steve Ricchetti of the White House requested to know what the process was, if he stayed in or if he decided to step back. And so I gave Steve 2 names to call. I said, I want you to call a good friend. We call him Delegate Dave. He's a wonderful friend. The man can count better than I can. And I'm from Louisiana. So, we always get the numbers mixed up. And of course, I also said Jim Roosevelt, the grandson of Franklin Roosevelt, who's the co-chair of the DNC Rules and Bylaws Committee. Jim and I have been close friends for a long time. And I said, those are the 2 people you should call. And I wrote out some plans for him and I submitted it. And then the rest is history. But I knew I had to make those calls. Why? Because Jamie Harrison, the current chair, couldn't make the calls. That would have been a violation of the rules. He can't get involved in the process. And I knew nobody in the campaign. Because at this point, it went back to the DNC. And as a DNC member, at-large District of Columbia DNC member, I just called my friends and my colleagues across the country. I called Malcolm Kenyatta in Pennsylvania. I called Aaron Ford in Nevada, Pat Spearman in Nevada. I mean, look, I'm a walking textbook of Democratic politics. It's my life. Yeah. I guess I can say that as a childless woman with no cats.
Who did you have to argue? So there's 2 stages to that. There was are you still behind Joe Biden? But then once Biden signals he's no longer running, you were pushing for everybody to get quickly behind Harris, which is actually what happened. Did you find resistance in those conversations, either before Biden got out or after Biden got out? Did you have to really argue with people?
Oh, yeah. For the first time in my adult life, and I told this to my oldest sister, I said, Cheryl, I knew I was a leader when I was growing up. After all, she was number 1, I was number 3, and I led the house of 9 children. So I know I can lead, but what I didn't know I could ever call people that I truly admire and respect and say, oh, no, not under my watch, none of the watch of anybody I know, period. you will not replace Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. There were many people within our party, including donors. Some of the donors I know very well, smart people, lovely people. They got more money than me, but you know what they don't have? They don't have what I often refer to as the political smarts. I say, how do you think you can overturn the will of the Democratic voters and replace both Biden and Harris? And they came up with all these different, scenarios about an open convention and a little small primary. And I heard from, former party leaders as well as I heard from former presidents. And again, I kept my position, and I'm grateful that both former Governor Dean, a former chair, along with former my good friend um, Terry McAuliffe and Howard Dean. I mean, they were incredible. They really stepped up. We drafted a letter as former chairs, and we got it out, and we circulated. There were still efforts to basically remove both the president and vice president. And that's when I had to go into what I call my most important strategic role that I know, and that is to call people who are very powerful in the party. And I said, we are going to bat this down as soon as the president makes his decision. I had no idea it was going to come on Sunday at 1:42, but once it was done, we got off the credentials call, which meant that every delegate at that time became free. We're not bound of Rule 13J. And I got back on that phone, and by the time I talked to the Vice President of the United States at 9:21 p.m. on the 21st, I told it would take me 48 hours. It took me 32 hours, so I was quicker because I think I had Bakari, and by then everybody was like, what state to call? We even got to West Virginia. I talked to Joe Manchin. I was calling everybody. Everybody was, yeah, I wanted to lock it down.
The historians will watch this video and put it in their books. Let me ask you about this. The Washington Post came out with a poll this morning about Black support. I just want to read you some of the numbers here. 69% of Black Americans are certain to vote in November, which is up from 62 in April. So that's an improvement, but it's below 74% in June of 2020. And if you ask Black Americans who they plan to vote for, 82% say they're going to vote for Harris. That's up from 74% in April voting for Biden, but it's shy of the 87% that wanted to vote for Biden in June of 2020. So Harris has clearly had significant improvement from the spring for the Democratic ticket among African-American voters, but the party is not where it was in 2020. And I think that's a big concern in some of these states where African-American turnout, I mean, it's hard to imagine any scenario of Democrats winning a state like North Carolina without significant African-American turnout and support. So what is going on there, and what more does Harris need to do in these final months?
Well, first of all, you've been reading my mind, because about 12 days ago, you have to understand that I'm a former chair, I'm a former campaign manager. I have 7 presidentials under my belt as a staffer, and I got 3 as a consultant. So, and I've campaigned in 49 states. One more state, I'm gonna become Miss USA without the bikini. So, I feel this from a gut level. I was down in Georgia a few weeks ago, not on behalf of the campaign, because I don't want to be a candidate staffer anymore. And I said, I could smell it. There's a possibility, but I could still see where there was some gaping holes and some weaknesses in reaching the voters. It's one thing to have $500 million in the bank. You can run as many ads that you want to. You can do digital, you can do TV and radio, you can put stuff in the newspaper. But at the end of the day, when you see this gap among Black voters that she is now experiencing, Joe Biden had a larger gap, but now it's coming down. The enthusiasm is there, so more people are getting active and getting involved. You have to actually meet people where they are. You cannot. This is not. Let me run an ad. This is like, let me go and talk to Mr. Joe or Miss Mary, or go to the campus where we know they are. They're young, they're restless, searching for tomorrow. So you're not going to reach them through those, even the QR codes that now exist, or even some of the TikTok stuff. You have to actually meet these people where they are. You have to go and sit outside Safeway Giant, or go to one of these Howard University games. But when I say Howard University, that means down in Georgia. You go to Savannah State, and you go to all of the HBCUs from Morehouse to Spelman. You're going to have to go find them. They're not going to register in the polls. You're going to have to go find them. Remember, Donald Trump is going to find 4,000 to 5,000 people per precinct that we're not even anticipating showing up, because they don't go around saying, I'm a Trumper. They're going to show up. You saw that from 2016 to 2020. So the campaign must, first of all, remember, we're not in COVID. See, 4 years ago, you can reach people through all these other magics of the internet. Now you're going to have to actually go and see them, talk to them, and convince them. I think they can do this. And the fact that she can grow her support still from where she stands, it's a tied race. That means that she might have the Donald Trump effect in 2024 by bringing out 4,000 to 5,000 more people in every precinct across the country.
I've got about 1 minute left, so I want to ask you a little wonky question here. You mentioned you're on Rules and Bylaws Committee. I've covered the Rules and Bylaws Committee's decision to change the early nominating states in the Democratic Party, cutting out Iowa and New Hampshire, elevating Michigan. One of the details of that change was it was for one cycle only. So there was nothing binding the party, nothing binding rules and bylaws to making that the same order of states next time around in 2028. Do you have thoughts on what you'd like to see as the party goes back into that process after this election? What should the order be, or do you feel like what has just happened is a pretty solid place to land?
No, I have an open mind. One of the things I enjoyed this past cycle was seeing 17 states compete to be ahead of the calendar. We call it in the pre-window, the pre-primary calendar, the window. I'm looking forward to seeing some of these states once again come and basically, campaign to be number one, number two, number three, number four. We didn't set Iowa and New Hampshire aside. We just gave another set of voters in another region of the country an opportunity to be the first decider. It worked this time. We don't know what will work in 2028, but this is going to be one of the discussions that the Rules and Bylaws Committee will have to decide early on in 2025 and 2026. I've been appointed to this position, and I was reappointed to this position. I look forward to seeing how the next chair of the Democratic Party and the members of the Rules and Bylaws Committee come up with this decision. But I will give my input, and that is shake it up, do something different, bring in another group of people, and give them the opportunity to be number one. Hopefully, my alma mater, LSU, will hear that and start getting their football team together, because I've been having some disappointing weekends. The Saints made it better yesterday, but this is also sports season, so I got two fevers going on, and I'm hot both ways. I love sports and I love politics, so I'm in a happy place.
Well, on that note, unfortunately, we're out of time. Thank you so much for joining us today, Donna. We'll do it again sometime soon.
Every time I talk to you, some news breaks. I better hurry up and get upstairs and make sure my doors and windows are locked, because who knows what's going to break after talking to you, Michael.
It's a black swan election. Anything can happen. Thank you for joining us at home or at work or on your cell phone, wherever you're watching us. If you are not yet a subscriber to the Washington Post, go to washingtonpost.com/live, and there is a free trial subscription waiting for you. Get to read all our stories, more great content like this. That's a wrap for today. I'm Michael Shear, national political reporter, Washington Post. I'll see you next time.